at one point or another, and even in All Sons and Daughters, there were moments where I was told it's probably not a good idea to write songs about social justice. And I thought, well, then this probably isn't the right path for me, because those things are so important to me. And so
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 154 of the Between You and Me podcast. My name is Jessica Morris. I'm a music journalist from Australia, and every week it is my delight to introduce you to an amazing singer-songwriter as we talk about the things that hurt, heal, and change us in church culture. Thank you so much for your amazing feedback on last week's episode with Mitch Wong. He was definitely someone I've wanted to chat to for years, and it was so fun to talk about moving overseas and choosing obedience over ego. Mind-blowing, right? This week is very exciting because we have an acclaimed singer-songwriter from Nashville for you. I know you're thinking, you talk to them all the time. No. This one, her name is Leslie Jordan, and Leslie is probably better known by you for being part of the duo All Sons and Daughters. Now, All Sons and Daughters, as we know, was a Grammy-nominated duo with David Leonard and Leslie Jordan, and they were quite big from like 2009 to 2018. They released multiple albums, and people loved them. So when they decided to press stop and go the individual ways, people were pretty sad. But what's cool about Leslie is that she has been busy. Leslie is a signed songwriter with Integrity Music, and she has had cuts with more artists than you can count. I'm talking Lauren Daigle, Kerry Jobe, Brandon Heath, Matt Maher, Citizens, anyone and anyone. She writes incredible music, and as you will hear in the bio that's about to come up, the actual numbers of like the streams of songs that she's written is staggering. It's 344 million. I didn't even know that was a number, but it is. So that's amazing. Anyway, I'm excited for you to hear from Leslie because a lot of us have this weird relationship with Christian music, right? We listen to this because we love it, but we also have deconstructed so much of our own faith or our relationship with the evangelical church. And when it comes to living in Nashville and working in the Christian music industry, there's such a sense of having to know what you believe because it goes into your art, and then part of that art is sold. So it gets really interesting about how we navigate that space. The cool thing about Leslie is she's not afraid to talk about it. She's not afraid to talk about the hard places and what it means to be part of the Christian music industry. Beyond that, she also created a nonprofit called The Fold, which is about fostering a safe space for artists, creatives to be their most authentic selves in Nashville, which, I mean, it should be like second nature. We should just be authentic when we create art, right? But when it comes to industry, when it comes to having to put food on the table, sometimes authenticity doesn't sell. So it's really cool she's fostering this space, and I can't wait for you to hear it. All right, you're about to hear a bio, the who, what, when, where, why of Leslie Jordan. It's pretty cool. Then we'll jump straight into my interview, and through it, you're going to hear some tracks from her new EP, You Are With Me. Let's go. For 15 years, singer-songwriter Leslie Jordan has worked in and around Nashville, cultivating community, poetry, and honest art. Originally on staff at Journey Church in Franklin, Tennessee, she and fellow worship leader David Leonard, yes, that David Leonard, formed All Sons and Daughters in 2009. Signing to Integrity Music, they released 3 EPs in the first year, and their folky acoustic tones, similar to the Civil Wars, pulled in a dedicated fan base. This made way for their first album titled Season 1 in 2012. Fun fact, it's currently in my car. And amidst touring and appearing on a slew of other artist albums, All Sons and Daughters EP, The Longing, came out in 2013. But it was their self-titled album the following year that saw them gain acclaim across industries. That album made it to the top 10 in both the Billboard Christian and folk charts and appeared in the Billboard 200. Pretty impressive. After releasing the live EP Greater You Lord, All Sons and Daughters' last original album Poets and Saints dropped in 2016. Inspired by their travels in Europe and accompanied by a book penned by their pastor, it would be their most acclaimed work of their career. David and Leslie received a Grammy nomination for Best Contemporary Christian Album. Now, over the course of the All Sons and Daughters and their career, the band appeared on albums with Lauren Daigle, Francesca Battistelli, Third Day, Young Oceans, Leland, Brandon Heath, Sandra McCracken, Morgan Harper-Nichols, Paul Baloche, Ginny Owens, Remedy Drive, Chris Tomlin, Gunga, and more. Capping their short but successful career with the compilation album, fans were saddened when All Sons and Daughters finished up, but Leslie's story and her journey in music was far from over. At this stage, Leslie had already established herself as a prolific songwriter. Aside from the multitude of tracks she'd written for All Sons and Daughters, she had penned a track for Lauren Daigle's debut, Kerry Job's 2012 album Where I Find You, and Matt Maher's 2015 release Saints and Sinners. She signed with Integrity Music as a staff songwriter, and she made her mark, albeit a little bit more behind the scenes than before. She had a song cut for I Am Bay's 2018 album, and in the following years would pen tracks for and with, get ready, JJ Heller, Torrin Wells, Christine DeClaro, Josh Burrells, Sandra McCracken, Passion, Orphan No More Co, Ginny Owens, Mission House, Vineyard Worship, Josh Baldwin, Taylor Leonhardt, for Porter's Gate, Citizens, New Song, King's Porch, Revere, and The Faithful Projects. And get this, on Spotify alone, her tracks have culminated in more than 344 million plays. Now, it was around this time that Leslie founded The Fold, a non-profit that exists as a safe space for writers and artists to gather and create. Passionate about social justice and creativity, The Fold blends her two loves, and gathering creatives together for workshops and camps, the non-profit actually helps them to create even more authentic work. In the midst of all this, she raises her son Judah with her husband Thomas. Leslie also began to release her own music, and this time it was under her own name. In 2020, she dropped the singles Home, Instrument of Peace, and Mother Bird, Mama Bear. Joining the Faithful Collective, which brought together female creatives to write songs based on women in the Bible, Leslie also became a key songwriter alongside artists like Amy Grant, Rachel Lamper, and Tamar Chip. She co-wrote the song This Time I Will Bring Praise and performed it alongside Christy Nockels and Kelly Minter. She also co-wrote the single You Came For Me and performed it with Ellie Holcomb and Sarah McIntosh. In 2022, Leslie released her first EP, titled All That I Know, and it included the singles Great I Am and Love Will Never Fail. She also released a live version of this called the Foxden Sessions. Joining Integrity Music's Anger Hymns collective, Leslie was featured on the single Lord Have Mercy with Tim Timmons, still cutting plenty of tracks with other artists. So come 2023, she had a lot to choose from her follow-up. The result is the EP You Are With Me, which came out on July 28th. Co-produced by Leslie and Jess Ray, it has tracks including songs like A Thousand Shores, which she co-wrote with Citizens, and the duet Let It Be Lovely with our friend Jillian Edwards. I spoke to Leslie about fostering a safe space for creatives, the murky side of Christian music, and singing her own songs. Friends, it's my privilege to introduce you to Leslie Jordan. Leslie Jordan, welcome to the Between You and Me podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on today.
No, my absolute, like I said, I'm so excited to chat with you. We have some mutual friends. I didn't realize how many of your songs I have heard until I started listening to your upcoming EP and realized I've heard them recorded by multiple people. So I am delighted to chat with you about your new release, You Are With Me, and just a bit more about your life and career. But for everyone who, like me, had sort of gone, oh, Leslie, I've heard about her, but who is she? Who is Leslie Jordan, in your own words?
Well, if you Google me, I'm a recently deceased comedian from the TV show Will and Grace. Rest in peace. I am. I'm a mom and a wife and a songwriter and a blackberry farmer as of late. I have been writing songs for the last, I'm 38 and I got a guitar when I turned 9. So really since then, so almost 30 years I've been kind of plucking away at the guitar and writing songs. And I was in a band called All Sons and Daughters for about 10 years and did that, toured for about 7 of those years. Really, there was a greater emphasis on writing songs for our church community. And so that is really coming out of that season in 2017. I've been spending the last 7 years writing songs with other artists for their church community or their fan base or their family or fill in the blank. And I also started a nonprofit about 6 years ago called The Fold, where we serve writers and songwriters here in Nashville. who want a safe community to be themselves, and we do that through retreats and creative writing workshops, which has just been it's been super fun. I've gotten to do it in a lot of different spaces, whether it's churches or recording projects or group retreats, and it's just fascinating to see what a little spark of creativity can do for a whole community. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. The Reader's Digest version.
I enjoyed the Reader's Digest version. I love the fact that you're a blackberry farmer who's also a songwriter, who's also a non-profit founder / director of sorts. I love that collaboration. It sounds like the most unexpected, like, Nashville thing in the best way that I've heard. I love it. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And I'll have to check out The Fold when I'm in town next. It sounds wonderful. I wish that I'd known about it when I was there, that it existed when I was there. It would have been so
I know. It's a real special place, and we actually just had kind of a family dinner out. So we moved to this property, and I say recently a blackberry farmer because we moved to this property in 2020 when everyone made crazy decisions, like everyone's like, well, what if we just do this? And we were like, what if we just move out to the country? And so we inherited like 70 blackberry plants that are already cultivated and growing. And so it's a huge learning curve, and grapevines and all kinds of stuff we've had to kind of figure out how to maintain and take care of. But the blackberries are out of control right now. So that's why I say currently a blackberry farmer, because they're coming out our ears. But we had a little full dinner and kind of down in the vines, and it was really special. We're getting ready to kick up some more stuff for that organization coming up this fall. So
now I will ask a question about your EP shortly, but I do want to know, did you eat anything blackberry related at this dinner, knowing that you have so many blackberries at the moment?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's funny is like the blackberries weren't quite ready on our farm yet, but I did make a big batch of blackberry margaritas, and they were the favorite of the evening. So
yes, well played. Yeah. Nicely done.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So your EP, You Are With Me, is coming out this Friday as we record this. And now my understanding is that it's a set of B-sides from like a sort of a previous project, but like tracks that you've previously written that other people have recorded, which just intrigues me. I love the fact that this is not your take on them because they're your songs, but this is your heart, essentially. Can you tell me about the EP and how this culminated and why you were like, I'm going to release these under my name?
Yeah, I think originally the idea was kind of just maybe a bridge to get back into the studio for me, because after All Sons and Daughters ended, I just really didn't have any ambition to make Christian music again. I loved writing songs with my friends who were writing Christian music, but it never felt like something I was setting out to do, really, even in the first place. I was just writing songs for a church, and then somebody from Integrity heard them. We ended up, somebody was like, are you guys a band? And I initially was like, no, we're not a band. We're just writing songs for the church. And so I think I've always just been I've had a healthy understanding of what the music industry is and what it does. And I've liked the space that I've been able to keep in that world. And so even in my relationship with Integrity, there's been so much autonomy. And so it was probably 4 years ago, I put out 3 songs. I guess it was in 2020 I did them with my friend Latifa. They were songs that weren't necessarily for the church, but they were faith adjacent, I would say. And so that was really kind of my re-entry point back into creating music, being in a studio since the band ended. And but I was writing all of this stuff with all of these friends who were releasing songs on their records, and they're songs that I really loved. And so I really saw, for me, a path forward in writing songs for the church, continuing to do that, and in these faith communities. And I thought, well, it could be fun for me to do an interpretation of the songs because I love them so much. And a lot of these songs from the first EP to this one were birthed out of friendship and relationships. And I think that's why they're so important to me. Not only the original versions, but now these versions for me is they felt close to my heart And so it's always fun when you get to be in a co-write with a friend who then goes, I like this song enough to put it on my record. There is this like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome, this thing that we created together, and you love it enough to put it out. And so the other side of it for me is to honor my friends who released the songs in the first place, and to say, I love them too. I love them enough to record them and put them out, and to just support my friends in that way, and hopefully, introduce the songs to a whole different audience. And, sonically, they're very different from the original form. And so I was just hoping that there was some way of connecting the dots for people, but also like, oh, maybe somebody else will hear them that hasn't heard them before. And then maybe they'll be connected back to, maybe they'll, if they've not heard Citizens, which you probably are living under a rock if you haven't at this point, but, if you haven't heard the Citizens record, like maybe this will draw you back to that. I don't know, any little thing I can do to celebrate my friends and the work that they're doing. And so this is really kind of that. It's not an attempt at a new artistry. I just really want to honor the songs and honor the relationships, and I want it to sound good. So I think those are kind of my goals in the whole process.
You read my heart like an open book. You write my story and call it good. I can't imagine a greater truth. Who is like you? You know what I'm thinking before I ask. You're in my future, you're in my past. It's hard to imagine the way you move. Who is like you? You give my eyes the light to see. You give my lips the words to speak. You give my lungs the air to breathe. You are my everything. You give my soul a song to sing. You give my heart a melody. You give it every single beat. You are my everything. You are my everything.
Yeah, I really like that. I love that this EP, just what I'm hearing, is it's nearly like another bridge back to the community that you love and you celebrate. It's like another creative avenue, like your nonprofit or what appears to be elements of your life. This is just a musical formation of that, which is really cool.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, that's the hope as well. I think I kind of always said to the team at Integrity and the band and Jess, who co-produced it with me, is the goal of my life, the ambition of my life, is to just be a safe person and a safe place for people, for myself and for the people that I with. And so the ambition for the music would be the same thing, that it would just be a place that people kind of feel like they can let down and be themselves while they're listening to it, or find themselves in the songs. I don't need it to be the biggest record, or that to me is just so secondary. So I just wanted to make something I would listen to and that honor my friends, and that was created a safe space for other people. So
yeah. In your music, but also I look through your iykyk, it talks about how you sing about things like mental health themes. It even uses the term social justice, which got me really excited. And it talks this a little bit about adoption too, which I know is personal. But you implement so many personal aspects of your life into your writing, which I know is normal for a writer, but in traditional worship music, we don't, or in the past, we haven't always heard like those, I guess, those more taboo, or like the really deep, hard parts of life. We sort of tend to miss those psalms and go more towards the really excitable ones. And we're seeing that change in music now. But I love that you have an intention towards that in a really authentic way. Can you tell me, like, how do those circumstances, God with you in those hard, shadowy places, how do they inform writing quote unquote worship music for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at any of the Psalms and you see kind of those dark, shadowy places. And um, I am fortunate enough to have been a part in the last 5 or 6 years of some really beautiful communities in Nashville that are really honest. One in particular is an organization called Porter's Gate, and every record that the Porter's Gate does centers around a theme, and a theme that maybe tackles a conversation that the church has been afraid of having. And, I think the first record I was ever a part of was one called Neighbor Songs. And there was a group of about 70 songwriters and artists and scholars and theologians and authors and church clergy all kind of crammed in the art house in Nashville, and gender, race, like every across the board. It was just beautiful. And we had discussions around race in the church, and how can we not shy away from this? I think it's crazy too. Obviously, this is an age-old conversation. This is not something that's going to go away until we continue to have these conversations. But it was the precursor to George Floyd. This was in 2019 when we were having this conversation, this gathering, and the importance of finding ways to educate ourselves, finding ways to become allies as white people alongside our friends in a marginalized community and in America, at least. And so, I think for me, all of that stuff should inform the music that we're writing. Jesus was for justice, and Jesus was for the outcast, and Jesus was for making a way to connect people with each other. And so I think any of the things that tend to divide us, whether it's maybe it's social justice, maybe it's mental health, maybe it's infertility, maybe it's you fill in addiction, fill in the blank, like whatever it is. If the church ignores that long enough, it will continue to fall behind. I mean, I think the whole world is talking about mental health right now. We just went through this global pandemic, and I don't think there was a corner of the earth that was untouched by the challenges that came from COVID. And so I think if we, as the body of Christ, ignore that ailment, that physical and mental ailment that's happening to the body of Christ right now, it's going to start to deteriorate. And so this most recent record that's for the Porter's Gate is in partnership with this organization called Sanctuary Mental Health. And their whole organization exists to equip the church, resource the church, to find ways to help people through mental health challenges. And really, the church doesn't do a great job at it. We like to farm that out to other people, and the church should be a place where all are welcome, and that we are equipped to know what to do with those in those circumstances. And so we got together and heard the vision and mission of this organization, and then we wrote songs from that place. And so one of the songs on this record is actually from that project, which is funny because I tried to do these EPs where all these songs came out after the original version, but this is actually good to me is going to be a precursor to the one that will come out in, I think in September with Porter's Gate. But that record and being a part of that community is really, it's really important for me because those have always been things I've been very passionate about. And at one point or another, even in All Sons and Daughters, there were moments where I was told it's probably not a good idea to write songs about social justice. And I thought, well, then this probably isn't the right path for me because those things are so important to me. And so, I don't know. I think not to should on the church because I don't think that that's healthy there, but I do think that there are ways that the church can improve on knowing how to address these things and not just sing the songs that bring us good feelings, but also address the real needs of the people in the church community. And so it's always an honor to write about that stuff, and it's never easy. But luckily, I get to do it alongside other people who are very vulnerable and honest about that stuff. And it's a joy to create music with these folks because they go at it just the same way I do. And it's been a real joy.
I can taste the sweetness of your mercy, but I feel the sting of grief still in my chest. Not sure I've known the one without the other. have been, you will be. You are so good to me. I reach out my hand in hopes you'll hold on, but time and time again find empty space. I will keep them open though they're shaking, and call to mind the times I felt the grip of grace. You have been, you will be, you are still here with me. You have been, you will be, you are still here with me.
This is a sort of a slight sidestep. Writing about these topics, that's a very broad way of saying anything human experience. Writing about them is essential and important. And writing about them in community to transform community is huge, and God uses that. But what does it look like in the Christian music industry, which we tend to commodify things, which are important, but then we sell them and it becomes popular? I'm not saying it's a bad thing that they become popular. It's just this weird hold space of going, well, now we're sort of all whole, like now this is the cool thing to talk about, so let's talk about that. But it's sort of like, where is the line between authentic and disingenuous? And I'm not asking you to be like, this is what disingenuous at all. But how does it look for you? Like in some ways, you're part of an industry, and you make a living off music, which you write very authentically. How do you hold space for those topics, knowing that, there's money involved, and there's labels involved, and there's people involved, and marketing, and obviously you're not as much involved in that as you were. But what does it look like to hold space for those topics, knowing that this weird industry consumption thing is also out there?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think I'm asking that question just in general for, songs for the church. But, I think the closest thing that I can maybe relate that would be, have you read a book that's changed your life?
Yeah.
Like, that would be my question to you. Like, have you read a book that's changed your life? Well, I've read plenty of them. And without the business of book publishing, that I would never have read that book. And that book would have never changed my life. And I've got this book right here. I'm not reading it right now. You probably can't see it because of my screen, but Healing Through the Dark Emotions, The Wisdom of Grief, Fear, and Despair by Miriam Greenspan. I've read parts of it, and then I was just reminded of it the other day, so I pulled it out. And I think about books like that. And, marketing and a public relations team, and there's royalties on the back end of that, and there was an advance for that author, and there is an icky side to industry in general, but there is also a really beautiful, profound part of it that says, you as the person who creates this thing that could illuminate a new way for other folks, we honor and value that enough to say it's okay to create art and make a living from that art. I think the part that gets challenging for me is when a church becomes a record label, and then that church is somehow monetizing, or it's this. I would say the beautiful things are still beautiful, right? But then the complexities of it for me are when the thing that's kind of meant to be this uncommodified organization that's meant to exist, Christ, they said it to be the safest for people. Now there is kind of this air of competition of like who gets on stage and who gets on records, and how does, if you're signed to a label that's a part of a church community, then what happens if you want to leave the church? Do you leave the label? And I'm not a part of those communities, so this is hopefully this doesn't sound like judgment as much as it just sounds like real curiosity. How does that work? How do the I almost prefer it to be the industry separate from the church, because then it kind of makes more sense to me. A business is a business, but should a church be a business? And those are the places I tend to kind of ask more questions. But all in all, I think somebody's making money off of the art, and if I would much prefer it to be the artist, the person who creates the music, the person who creates than the Spotifys and the Amazons and the people who are, I don't know.
I know.
Like I said, I could talk about this all day because I have lots of opinions.
No, that was so well answered. Because that was such a not intentionally, but it was such a murky question, and you answered it so well. Thank you. I was like, whoops, I accidentally released some landmines there. I apologize. That wasn't the intention.
No. Listen, I'm not afraid of any question, and I think asking them is better than not asking them. And I'm always constantly asking those sorts of questions, and probably why I tend to, I don't know, I get labeled sometimes as the devil's advocate, which I don't love that term, because that just means like somebody who advocates for the devil. I'm like, that's not really fair. I'm just asking questions that maybe like you haven't thought to ask yet. So no, I'm all for it. Bring on the murky questions. Doesn't scare me.
Let every word from my mouth, let every song in my heart, let every thought in my mind, let every prayer in the dark, let it be lovely, let it be pure and true, let it be pleasing. Lord, let it honor you. Let every morning I rise, let every moment I rest, let every breath that I take, let all the work of my hands, let it be lovely, let it be pure and true, let it be pleasing, Lord, let it honor you.
I love that. As a journalist, I respect that greatly. As a human, I respect that as well and appreciate it. And I have a couple of questions, and I've just got some popcorn things to finish things off. But I do want to ask, can you tell me about the Folds? If someone's in Nashville and they're thinking, what is this? Can you tell me more about its creation and how people can get involved?
Yeah, the creation of it kind of stemmed from a couple of experiences I had with the songwriting community at my church at the time, and then going to this creative writing retreat at a woman's house named Pat Schneider. She created this writing method called the Amherst Writers and Artists Method back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's really just a prompt-based creative writing method that you sit in a circle with people. Sometimes people say it kind of reminds them of like a 12-step thing where it's like everything's confidential, but everybody gets the same writing prompt. Everybody has the same amount of time to write, and then it's optional to share. But whatever you need to write, whatever you need to say, if it has anything to do with the prompt or nothing to do with the prompt, is completely up to you. There's no wrong way to do it. And then if you choose to share, the group is only able and allowed to say back to you what's strong about the piece and what stays with them. So there's no criticism, there's no questions. It's only just like, this is what's strong to me. And you might write something that's deeply personal, but we speak to the narrator as someone who's not the writer. So you may have written the piece and it may be very personal or autobiographical, but in order to kind of keep the writer and the narrator separate, we speak to the narrator instead of the writer. And so it's just a way of, again, it's a safe place, and it's something that I fell in love with when I found out about it. And I sat in Pat's living room, and I feel like she almost commissioned me to take it back to Nashville. So it was kind of accidental. My mom sent me her book. I read her book. I found out she was doing this retreat at her house, and I went, and then she found out I was a songwriter, and she talked to me about, the church and actually how it kind of wounded her along the way, and how the thing she missed the most was singing songs together with people. And so then she asked me to sing a hymn with her in her office, and she wept, and I wept, and then I felt like she just kind of said, like, you gotta do this, and so I ended up getting certified, and we've got 4 more leaders here in Nashville who also certified, and COVID kind of, stopped some of our progress, our gathering, obviously. And then some of this, releasing music for me has also put me in a position where I haven't had a ton of extra time. But our hope in this season is to start workshops again. So that's the best way for people who are in Nashville who are curious about what we do to get involved, is through these workshops. And they're paid workshops, but it's very minimal, considering what a lot of these workshops will charge around the country. We try to make it as economical as possible. And then our retreats that we lead, they tend to be invitation only as a means to kind of keep those spaces safe. And a lot of times we have artists who have, we run the gamut from people who have been in the industry for 5 days and people who have been in the industry for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. And so we call them retreats for songwriters. They're not songwriting retreats, because I think there's a difference. It kind of it takes the precedence off of the song being the important thing and puts the emphasis on the retreat part. And so we just make good food, have good drinks, and we spend a lot of time just writing, creative writing, and encouraging each other. And it's a really sacred space. And so yeah, it's been, I would say it's probably my life work. And my husband and I, it's why we moved to the country, is to create a space where, people can just come and be, and so that's what we're building. It might take us forever to do it, but I think we're so committed that we're learning how to farm blackberries, for crying out loud. So
yes,
we're neck deep. So
that's excellent. One last deeper question, then some quick, fun, hopefully fun ones. But if you could go back to the day before you signed a record deal with All Sons and Daughters, what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now?
I would say you have no idea what's ahead for you. And I would say educate yourself as much as possible on the industry. I think that's one thing now. I have such a desire. I sit with, young artists and folks who are walking into this industry, and I believe in it. Like, I really do. I've been in it for 13 years now, and I think we signed a pretty bad deal, back in 2010. Nowadays, like I've looked at it recently, and I've been like, wow, that was not a great contract. But here we are, and I feel like the wisdom I've gained in the last 13 years, and then just like learning what it all means, there's enough resources out there for young artists and writers that I would say find ways to be educated on what is publishing, what is the tag, ask those things, what are they collecting, what are you responsible? You need a record label to do these things. You music on your own, these are all things like years ago when I really independently, so that when I sit with independent artists, I have this experience and this empathy to be like, oh my gosh, it is really hard. It is expensive. It is really, fill in blank. And so I feel like I've had this spectrum for myself, doing it on myself, having a label that does a lot of the work for me. But, I just think that there are endless resources, endless allies, people that can help writers and songwriters find their way. And anyone who tells you they know what you should do is probably not the person you should be listening to. That's my 2 cents. If somebody says, oh, this is what you should do, I would say that's probably not a voice you should trust necessarily, unless they're like, that you've known your whole life and whatever, then take it with a grain of salt. But I do think there's a lot of people in this world, in this town specifically, who have strong opinions about what young artists should be doing. And I just think, my young self, know who you are, know what you want. And I look back and I think and there are so many things that I stuck to. I knew going in, for me, there were a lot of non-negotiables. I'm glad I knew that about myself. I think I've kind of always known some of those things about myself. So I feel a responsibility to say to those young artists, find the things out, know the things that you're willing to say yes to and the things that you're willing to say no to. And don't be afraid to say no. Just because you say no doesn't mean the opportunity is going to go away. And you'll just feel so much better about that no in the long run than you will about saying the yes and sacrificing yourself in order to.
That's so good. I'm going to remember that too for me, not as a musician, but just as someone who works in the media. That's excellent. Thank you.
God, we bring you the work of our hands now. Lay it down, lay it at your feet. What we've done, what we've built, what we've broken. Lay it down, lay it at your feet. God, we bring you the work of our hands now. Lay it down, lay it at your feet. What we've done, what we've built, what we've broken. Lay it down, lay it at your feet. You hold it all, Jesus, you hold it all.
Popcorn questions.
Quick popcorn questions for you, just more for fun than anything else. If you could get tickets to see anyone, living or dead, in concert, front row seat, who would you see?
Beatles.
Yes.
The Beatles.
Excellent choice.
Yeah. My son is really obsessed with them right now, so I would take my kid. And
that's perfect. And I didn't give a limit on tickets, so you can get VIP back behind the scenes ones if you want. That's totally your call.
I can. Yeah.
Number 2, what album or artist, whatever is easier, has influenced you the most as a musician?
You know, it's funny because there's just been seasons of my life where songs have been more or less important, you know?
Yeah.
And so I would say Patty Griffin early on. So Living with Ghosts, I think that record, it was like songwriting in a way I had never experienced it before. And it wasn't polished. It was raw and vulnerable and storytelling. And, you know, there was a lot of nuance to that world that I just fell in love with through Patty's music. And so, yeah, I mean, but growing up, I listened to everything. So I don't know. I think that was that or maybe but second Crucible record was the first record of hers I ever heard. It was her first record. I told her, you know, back when we kind of became friends, early on in probably 2014, 2015, I was like, I think if there was a president of your fan club, it would have been me. You know, I think that record for me came a pivotal time in my life. And so, I mean, I don't know, maybe that probably she would get mad at me for saying that, but she did actually. I have the lyrics, the handwritten lyrics to the song called Sunday Morning. And if anybody has not heard, she gets so upset. She's like, don't tell people to listen to that record, but go back and find Sandra's Crucible record and listen to the song called Sunday Morning. And she was cleaning out her basement a couple years ago, the original handwritten lyrics of that song, and gave them to me. And I'm like, it's like one of my most prized possessions.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Last question. What is the funniest or most embarrassing moment you've had in the writer's room?
Oh, gosh. In the writer's room? I don't know. I mean, I would say this is the first one that comes to mind. I was with Jess, Ray, and Taylor Linhart from Mission House, and I was really just getting to know them. This was back in early 2019, and we were writing for their record down at Jess's family's beach house in North Carolina. And Taylor is maybe one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, and she's now become one of my best friends. And we were sitting around just goofing off, and she started singing the tune of Benny and the Jets, but instead it was Jesus Paid My Debts. And so then we just then we just riffed on this song, and I don't know that I've laughed that hard in a long time. But it's pretty great. It's like I mean, obviously it's like Jesus paid my debts, but I'll have to remember some of the other lines. But oh my gosh,
That's excellent.
Yeah, we're kind of like, we always say, you know, there's a lot of people in the world that like won't run the bit with you, but Taylor's always good to run the bit. I'm always good to run the bit. If the bit starts, like, we're on the trail, and we won't quit until it just like absolutely makes no sense anymore. And I kind of knew in that moment, I was like, oh yeah, here we go. So we're two peas in that same pod. So it was pretty great.
If you ever decide to release a duet of Jesus Pay My Debts, I will be the president of the fan club for that song, just to be abundantly clear.
I do think we need to probably put out a little parody album. But I will say this is something else that so a couple years ago, Jess, Taylor, Sandra, and myself wrote a song that was actually, we all loved it so much that we started freaking it. And instead, we just started dreaming about starting a band together. And so our band name for the last 3 years has been Boots McCracken Little Hots. But we were like, that song, that's probably not going to work. People are going to think it's a honky tonk band or a toddler pageant show. And so instead, we came up with a new name. It's called Paper Horses, and we actually are releasing our first song next Friday, August 4th, I think, and it's called Have Mercy. So it's 6 songs, and it's something I'm super excited about.
I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, next Friday, Paper Horses, Have Mercy. It's Paper Horses and Jess Ray is the first single, and then we have 5 more songs after that. And the genre is bluegrass music, but faith adjacent songs. So they're really awesome, and I can't wait for people to hear them. I think it's going to break the internet. Yeah.
It better break the internet. That sounds excellent.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's cool stuff. It's probably the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. So just warning everybody.
Okay. I'll mentally prepare before I listen to it. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and for just being you. It's been so great. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thanks for the great questions and for the honesty and openness. I think it's great you're having these conversations with artists, and I hope people get to benefit from the open dialogue. So thanks for having me.
Of course.
Most merciful God, so much has gone wrong in the evil we've spoken, in the good we've not done. Heavy the darkness hangs on us. Will you turn the light back on? Have mercy on us. Have mercy, Lord. Have mercy, Lord. Most merciful God, too long we've been blind to the pain of the people this world leaves behind. Heavy the darkness hangs on us. Will you turn the light back on? Have mercy on us. Have mercy.
What I appreciated about Leslie is that she's so down to earth. There is literally no holds barred. Everything's super respectful, but she's seen and heard so much, and she's so passionate about people and bringing the beauty out in them. So thank you so much, Leslie, for chatting with me. It was such a delight and a privilege. Friends, you can go and get Leslie's EP right now. It is called You Are With Me. Go stream it, go buy it. It's in the show notes. Do all the things. Meanwhile, you can also connect directly with Leslie at lesliejordanmusic.com. And if you're on Instagram, you can find her at lesliejordanmusic. All those links are in the show notes, as I said. And if you are creative and would like to be part of The Fold in Nashville, make sure you check out thefold.us. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Between You and Me, friends. It was so good to catch up with you and to introduce Leslie to the Between You and Me family. Please make sure that you're subscribed to the Between You and Me podcast on any platform you listen to, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast. And while you're there, would you mind leaving us a rating? 5 stars is lovely. We appreciate it. All the links are in the show notes, as I said. Friends, that's all I have for you today, but make sure that you connect with us online at Between You and Me Pod or betweenyouandmepod.com. You'll find all our episodes there. In the meantime, as always, my name is Jessica Morris, and I will see you next week. Here's to hope.
Was lost in darkest night. You thought I knew the way. The sin that promised joy and life had led me to the grave. I had no hope that you would own a rebel to your will. And if you had not loved me first, I would refuse you still. But as I ran my hell-bound race, indifferent to the cost, you looked upon my helpless state and led me to the cross. And I beheld God's love displayed. You suffered in my place. You bore the wrath reserved for me. Now all I know is grace. Hallelujah. All I have is Christ. Hallelujah. Jesus is my life. Now, Lord, I would be yours alone and live so all might see the strength to